what a moment in today's gospel for this small family. Now, for the folks of Galilee, fishing in order to get enough food and resources to survive, it was a challenge. Here's this dad with two of his boys in their beat-up fishing boat after a night of fishing. They're mending their nets to be ready for the next fishing excursion. They might be bantering a bit, talking about food or how the fishing was or wasn't that night, whatever. In the middle of all of that, this Jesus person draws near. He says to the two young men, James and John, "I want you to follow me." Then this happens. They go. Stunningly, they go. They leave behind their boat, the future they had planned, their livelihood. They leave behind even their dad. Just like that. I've often wondered what they saw in Jesus' eyes or heard in his voice that led them to make such a stunning decision in the immediacy of that moment. But let's save that question for a different time. Let's turn from that dramatic exchange between those three and look to the one they left behind, to Dad. What those disciples did was amazing. But what about that dad now in the boat all by himself trying to take in what just happened? Could you imagine? Here he is with his two boys trying to eke out an existence, working hard, and now to his shock, after this Jesus shows up, off they go. I could imagine them, "Oh, boys, where are you going? Don't forget about your dad here. How am I supposed to do all this? Oh, what am I going to tell your mother?" Now, here's the thing about that dad. As unexpected as all this was, now left trying to get not just the rest of the day's work done, probably trying to take in the fact that he has no idea how he'll make it going forward. In the midst of all of that, this dad just does it. He just does what is needed. This man is one of the countless people in the Bible whose stories do not get told, but who, when their worlds are changed dramatically and something dumped in their laps, they just do what needs to be done so that others can do what they need to do. And suddenly this dad's world is turned upside down. So it is for Mom, the mother of these two young men. Now what? It doesn't seem fair. They don't know how they're going to do it. But they do it. They make it work. Yes, the Bible is filled with people like that. Countless people who just do what is needed for love. Thankfully, this world is also filled with people like that. So is this church. People suddenly left with new responsibilities, sometimes surprising situations, who, without great fanfare or notoriety, because of their goodness, because of their integrity, just do what needs to be done. Years ago, a friend of mine who had a number of things suddenly and rather unfairly thrown into her lap said, "I think that every city and every neighborhood needs a monument to responsibility. She went on, we've got statues for athletes and war heroes, for politicians and celebrities. We need monuments to those folks who are responsible, who care enough to do what needs to be done for everyone. Her words have stayed with me for well over 20 years. By far, the vast majority of the goodness that is accomplished in this world is done not by those we honor with statues, but by those folks not so celebrated, those whose life stories are not told. Maybe you are one of those folks. It might have been something that fell in your lap that you didn't see coming. Perhaps it's the last thing you ever wanted to do. Sometimes you don't even remember that you really all the way even made that choice. But when it was needed, you do it. If that's you. How about sometimes it feels a little lonely? I've done it. Perhaps it could be easy to imagine that others have a more carefree life, not carrying the burdens you carry. And what you do might sometimes feel unappreciated, unseen. Sometimes it's tedious, exhausting, overwhelming. If that's you, I have a word for you today. Maybe it's hard sometimes to remember that deep down you do choose this. Maybe it's sometimes hard to trust that it's worth it. So I'll speak for a moment from my heart in the hopes that you will hear words from that heart, that sacred heart. Maybe you are the one who has the greatest burden of caring for an aging parent, a child with special needs, a spouse who needs great care. If that's you, I think Jesus says to you, thank you. I see you. I know what you absorb that no one will ever know. Perhaps it fell to you to pick up the pieces after someone else was irresponsible, maybe even walked out and left a mess. And now you care for everyone impacted. It wasn't your fault, or at least mostly wasn't, right? But you try to do the right thing for everyone. And to you, I think, Jesus says, I know it shouldn't have been like this. What you are doing is important. You are making a difference. Stay true. I am with you. I am. Or maybe you use your time and resources to help those in need who could perhaps never, ever repay you. Maybe you care for people with disabilities. You spend hours trying to care for someone who is grieving. Perhaps you make time for that neighbor who is struggling, or include that person that others think is different. You do the right thing when no one is looking. It's hard sometimes, isn't it? To you, Jesus says, Thank you for caring for me. Thank you for loving me in those people when I need it. For loving me. Thank you. You are kind and generous, humble and helpful in ways that no one will ever know. You don't do it for glory, but because of the goodness of your heart. You do it just because it's the right thing to do, the kind thing to do, even though it would be easier not to. To you, Jesus says, don't think I don't notice, because I do. Don't think I don't appreciate it, because I do. Don't think I don't love you, because I do. Today, 2 young men leave their dad behind in the boat to go off with Jesus. And suddenly his world is changed dramatically. We don't know anything else about this dad's life. But I believe that Jesus appreciated not only his sons for following him, but him for following him also. To all who, like that dad, do the right thing when it is needed, please know that your sacrifices don't go unnoticed, that all you absorb for the good of the world makes a difference. And I pray that on some level, somewhere in here, you deep down can know it's worth it. Jesus tells you it's worth it. It is.